our native land, our native land, our native, our native, our native land. Hiya, hiya, our native land.
Hey everybody, Tchadas Leo here, host of Our Native Land through Czech Podcast Studios in Victoria, British Columbia. Before I get to today's guest, I would just like to do a territory acknowledgement. I acknowledge with respect the Lekwungen peoples on whose traditional territory Czech Studio stands upon, and to all the tribes that are part of the Coast Salish, New Channel, and Kwakwakak on Vancouver Island. I thank these nations and traditional land keepers for allowing us to live, work, and play on their lands. Thank you again, the listener and viewer, for tuning in to another episode of ONL. I'm so excited for you to be here, and I'm so excited for my guest to be here as well. It is Jarrid Lee, and he is a Indigenous country music singer, artist, a fantastic human being. He's half Makokas and half Patra from Alberta. Jarrid is open for shows for Tom Cochrane, Red Rider, and other country music legends such as Tanya Tucker and his idol Luke Bryan. Which is super cool. So this guy's already done some great stuff in the music industry. Jarrid, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You are the guy, Tchadas. Thank you so much for having me. Even though we had a little bit of a problem with our time zones,
That's okay.
we got it figured out.
I'm not a time zone expert either, so it's totally fine. We made it. I'm excited, man. So tell me, as I mentioned, you're a country music singer, writer, producer, which is super exciting. Let's go back to a young Jarrid before you were an artist, and maybe talk a bit about the journey. Maybe the first time you picked up a guitar and what inspired you to do the career you're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up. Every family member that I have either plays music, they sing, they play fiddle, plays an instrument. So there's no shortage of musical inspiration growing up. So I followed my dad and his band around, and his band was called County Express, and Dad used to play every event from weddings to rodeos, beer fests. You pretty well name it.
Everything.
And he played some big stages as well as myself, which would include Big Valley Jamboree, and now it's called Country Thunder, which is called it's in Craven. So that was my lifestyle, and my life growing up was music, and every weekend spent on the road. And then I got into hockey, so it was hockey and music at the same time.
Nice.
Then at the age of 12, my dad bought me my first guitar, and then that's when the endless hours of pursuing the Metallica and the ACDC and all the good stuff you hear with distortion on guitar
Yeah.
came from.
Yeah.
So it was hours upon hours of just self-taught lessons and learning as much as I can about the guitar. And I always sang growing up since I was a little kid, and I didn't put one and two together till I was in about high school, and had a little high school band, and it was rock. And then somehow I found myself listening to the new sounds of country and Y2K, and listening to people like Luke Bryan, and he actually brought me back into country, where I was gonna pursue my music career as a rock star.
Yeah.
And then somehow I just fell back in the country and the songwriting, and that's where I am today. So it's been 6 years of I guess calling it professional.
Yeah,
So that's where I'm at today.
Nice. And tell me, so you just released a new album, correct, or a new single?
A new single. It's going to be on a full length album, and I'm on song number 7 right now,
Nice.
and working on song number 8. So if I can get to 10 within this year, that'll be fine, and I'll release it sometime in the new year.
Fantastic. That's cool. And what's been the general reception from your community with your success so far? Have you had a lot of good reception from the communities that you're part of with the music that you're producing?
Not always 100%, but the majority, yeah, it is supportive. We get the occasional, person that's either jealous or call them a crab in the bucket, but everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But even the people that don't like my music, I'm doing it for them too. I'm doing it so that the future generations that happen to come out in music or any kind of genre will have an easier time accessible. There's a lot of barriers of entry when it comes to music in general, but being an Indigenous person in music makes things a little bit harder. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, there's it's predominantly non-Indigenous people within country music. So when they see an Indigenous person, they automatically have their stereotypes, where it's like, I've been offered a drink before, and then I'm like, I don't drink, and they're like, what? You don't drink? I thought. I'm like, no, don't go there.
Yeah.
So things like that don't sit very well with me, and I'm usually quick to call somebody out. And to honestly be the best person I possibly can. That way, it makes it easier for the next person that wants to get involved in either country music or music in general.
Yeah, for so you're basically saying like a lot of people will have this perception that you need to experience a certain kind of pain or this certain kind of lifestyle in order to be a country music star, but you're really putting it out there that you don't really have to go through those certain things to be inspired to do this kind of music. Is that right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can be a songwriter, you can be a performer, you can be a musician. Heck, you can even play a keyboard or any instrument and be on a track. And as long as you're good and have a good upbeat attitude, then a lot of people are going to pick up on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's been an awesome journey thus far. Last 5 6 years have been nothing but a huge learning curve on the do's and the don'ts, and
Mm-hmm.
things like staying humble, shaking people's hands, being nice because you never know where your next gig is going to come from, and things like treating everybody as nice as humanly possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty well how I live my life, is be nice to everybody. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but you never know where your next paycheck is going to be coming from.
Absolutely, especially when you're an artist and a musician. It's not like you go to a job Monday to Friday and have a check waiting for you at the end of the week. So it's important to really build a good rapport with people. Know ensure
Yep.
yourself that you're going to have that opportunity again, right?
Yeah, build a good rapport with people and also build a good network. And like I said, I learned a lot of things from my dad, and one of them being shake hands with everybody. Shake hands with everybody. Even if somebody doesn't like you, you shake their hand anyway, because that person could say, "Hey, that guy's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hire that guy."
Yeah.
Versus if you leave a sour taste in their mouth, then that could have a negative ripple effect versus a positive ripple effect, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Speaking about shaking hands, let's talk about not being able to. There's with a lot of artists across Canada and the world, there's been a struggle with COVID, and now things are looking better. But tell me, kind of your schedule before COVID and then what you did during COVID to kind of cope.
We were full time. It was every weekend. It was sometimes we'd have shows during the week, and we were like full blast, full on. And I just got back from Winnipeg, and there was a 1 week music residency, an Indigenous music residency, where all the top Indigenous artists went to go get mentored by people like David Strickland, um, Jace Martin, Crystal Shawanda, Twin Flames actually showed up, Desiree Dorian, a lot of these top Indigenous artists here in
Wow.
Canada. They went to mentor us on how to get to the next level. So when we were sitting in the airport, there was four of us that were sitting there, and all of a sudden, people started to panic because a lady got taken off this airplane. She got put in like this incubator thing, and people came wearing these orange suits. It was like, "Oh, the virus is here! The virus is here!" And people started to run. They panicked.
Yeah.
While in the meantime, us four Indigenous kids were as cool as cucumbers, sitting there watching everybody panic and like,
Yeah.
"Oh, how cute! This is your first pandemic. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, how cute!" So we are kind of already used to having this resiliency within us, and also that runs through our blood, and
Mhm.
it's in our veins, right?
Yeah.
So we were sitting there like kind of laughing at people and like, what's the panic for? Like, don't buy into the fear. I can understand
Hmm.
not to shake hands with people, and there is a virus that has taken people's lives,
Hmm.
but also just to be diligent with cleaning and making sure that keeping your homes clean, and smudging, that also helps get rid of contaminants in the air.
Hmm.
So just being an Indigenous person, we already have cleanliness within us, right?
Hmm.
And before the pandemic, we were full board. So as soon as I got off the plane, I got a call from Isquay's road manager saying that the Junos were going to be canceled.
Yeah.
So I knew that if they canceled the Junos, which is one of the biggest Canadian, how would I say it, celebrations in terms of artistry, that the whole rest of my year was going to be shot. And
Yeah.
just like dominoes, I
Yeah.
started getting phone calls saying, "Oh, we got to cancel. We got to cancel." So things like casinos, a couple of weddings got canceled, music festivals. We were basically shut down. So I was like, okay, I have to release music, and I have to release it right now. So I released a 5 song EP during that time, which did fairly well. I had one song that went to number one on the Canadian Indie Country Countdown. It was also number one on channel 165, which would be called the Indigiverse now. It used to be called Indigenous Peoples Radio.
Hmm.
And that was from August 9th to the 15th. And
Nice.
even that was a learning lesson, because how do you record music without being in the same room as people and, scheduling and keeping everything clean. It was very difficult to do and very challenging
I can only
during a
imagine.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually most people are just in a room. We got the mics. You got your guy. Hit the button and
And then
let's
you
go.
go
Right. Yeah.
hit record and we're set.
Yeah.
But how do you do it safely? Not
Yeah.
only that, but a lot of radio stations too, people were telecommuting. So how do I get my song out to these radio producers who are sitting at home now?
Yeah.
Where they're not in the studio anymore. So
Yeah.
I can't do my radio tour because I can't go into the studio.
Yeah.
So a lot of things like meeting in person wasn't happening anymore.
Yeah.
So it's just been a new way of doing things, like how we're interviewing each other right now is
Hmm.
we're both online.
Yeah.
It's safe. I'm in the comfort of my own home. You're in the
Yeah.
comfort of your own studio.
Yeah.
So things like that have really changed the world, and it slowed it down to the point where maybe it was a good thing. Maybe it was a blessing in disguise that we need to actually stop and slow down,
Hmm.
take our time a little bit, let the world heal.
Hmm.
Let the world heal, because places like, India that had pollution, their air is clean now. We've seen rivers clean up. So I think right now, if you were to give the land back to the indigenous people and we'd say, okay, we're going to take care of it, make sure that we're going to be stewards of the land, we would clean it up and we would do a good job with it,
Hmm.
because we can't do any worse than how it's going right now,
Yeah.
which is
It was
another topic.
so crazy to see that a lot of those satellite images of just the difference of air pollution being minimized so much because so many people are at home not driving, all that type of stuff, right?
Yep, exactly.
There has been
Yep.
so many people on the road here in BC that we've gotten a refund twice from our insurance company
Wow.
because there were so many less accidents and problems on the road there. ICBC was handing out checks. Anyway, so we're getting off topic. Let's go back. Before I get into your heritage, which is also super exciting, talk to me about, so one of your inspirations and for getting you back into country music was Luke Bryan, and as I
Hmm.
mentioned at the beginning of the show, that you were able to open for Luke Bryan. So tell me about getting that phone call and getting on that stage and doing that.
Yeah, it was a radio contest. CKRM had a radio contest where you had to submit some original music and then you had an audition.
Hmm.
So out of that audition, there was about 16 of us, and the top three people got to do a Sunday afternoon for a certain artist that was going to be announced, and went down to Regina, Saskatchewan, had my audition, ended up taking second,
Hmm.
and that was good as long as we were able to get on stage. And then I got a songwriters award for my song "Small Town," which was an actual bonus too.
Nice.
So we found out it was Luke Bryan, and I lost it. I mean, it was kind of like he inspired me to get into country.
Yeah.
And then, a couple of years later, about 4 or 5 years later, I'm opening up for him. It was really Twilight Zone, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
And the other artists we got to open up for too would be in the afternoon, there was Jess Moskaluk, and then there was Sammy Kershaw, Aaron Tippin, Colin Ray. They have a little thing called Roots and Boots. And then after that, it was Midland, and then Luke Bryan. So as soon as they announced Luke Bryan was going to be on stage later on that evening, there was about 14,000 people in the crowd. So we
Yeah.
were standing at the front, and we turn around, the crowd starts to grow, and the crowd starts to grow with the acts that are going up. And
Yeah.
pretty soon in the evening, we're pushed up against the fence, looking back behind us, and there's thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah.
And talk about energy.
Yeah.
So that was an absolute dream come true to open up for all those names, like I said.
Yeah.
And just wanted to give a shout out to a couple of the other artists. Emerald Green Duo, they're out of Regina, and also Taylor Toluchuk. Awesome females, great songwriters. I hope their careers are going very well, because they were the other people that got to experience the same thing, so they can say the exact same thing I can.
That's cool. That's real cool. Must have been such a great experience, especially when,
Yep.
a lot of people, even when they're starting their career, whether they're a stand-up comedian or musician or anything, to be open for those significant names, 3, 4
Mm.
years in, or however many years in you were, that must have been just amazing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
absolutely amazing.
That's cool. Okay, so let's move on. So while I was on your website checking out your music videos, all
Mm.
that fun stuff, I saw a quote on your website. I'm just going to read it. It says, "My people will sleep for 100 years, but when they awake, it will be the artists that give them back their spirit." And instead of you wrote who quoted it, but you wrote "my great grandpa Louie Riel," which
Yep.
is so cool. And for those people who Just want a little background on Louie Riel before we continue. Louie Riel was a Canadian politician, a founder of the province of Manitoba, and a political leader of the Métis people. He led two resistant movements against the government of Canada and its first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald. So, an incredible great, great, great grandfather that you have. Tell me about what that means to you, and a bit more about your lineage.
That quote right there is something we're seeing in today's society. There's going to be a great awakening where people are going to be they're going to be woke with the things that are going on with the world, with the atrocities that happen within Canada, the true history of Canada.
Hmm.
Like, I wasn't taught this in school. We weren't taught this in regular Western curriculum. It was kind of like swept under the rug, but yet our families talked a little bit about it at home. They
Yeah.
talked about, what happened with taking over of the land, how First Nations people, Indigenous people were put on reserves, how we had to have an Indian agent give us some passes in order for us to go to town and get some
Hmm.
supplies, or to go hunting, or to go check our trap lines.
Yep.
So things like that, the resistance, Louis Riel, that, just read up on it. There's so much history there,
Hmm.
and just being able to be a family member of his, it's huge. Like, I come from two awesome political families, and the Tchadas side would be like Louis Riel. Then on my mom's side would be Big Bear. So a lot of us come from leadership, and a lot of us are products of the negative impacts of colonization.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, our people are going through a rough time right now, especially with finding all of these children that were buried in mass graves, and the impacts of this. It runs deep, and I was I was disheartened. I was hurt when I first found out the news, but at the same time, I wasn't surprised because my mom got me into our culture when I was young. She's the director of cultural education in our home community of Saddle Lake Cree Nation, Band 125 on Treaty 6 territory. And we found a school called Red Deer Industrial, where she gave me this piece of paper, and it was thick. It was like this big. It had, a few hundred names on it. And I was going
Hmm.
through the names. I said, Mom, who are these people? And I said, how come there's some people, these kids' names here, and it has their ages, and like 1900s, 1918, 1919, 1920. What does this mean? She goes, those were our ancestors.
Hmm.
Those kids, we don't know where they are. We're trying to find them.
Yeah.
That's our family, right? So we ended up going down to Red Deer, and it just so happened that Red Deer wanted to expand their city, and in order to do that, they were doing some ground penetrating radar around a school and around they're going to start a ring road, and they found a mass grave. So there was 16 kids that were all buried, in this grave side by side. So it's like two to a grave, four to a grave, and we actually did some investigating, and we did a commemoration for 4 years.
Hmm.
So during that 4 years, I was the president for this society called Remembering the Children. So Remembering the Children, we worked closely with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and that was the first school. The first school was the hardest that we had to find.
Hmm.
So out of 126 plus schools that came up, we found that one. And people right now, they're looking at Canada, and they're looking at the true history, and it's starting to unfold like a bad mystery novel kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
And the world's watching us right now. So right now, people are getting woke. So my people will sleep for 100 years, but it'll be the artist that'll wake them up.
Hmm.
When I write songs, I think about the true intent of what's behind my words and where my words come from and the inspiration. So I think we have to speak for our ancestors, and we have to speak from, like, today. Even the artwork, the things like, look at your beautiful background, our native land, that speaks.
Thanks. Yeah.
That speaks.
Yeah.
So the artwork, the artists, we're speaking, we're talking now.
Hmm.
And whereas before we had to be silenced, we didn't start contributing to the Canadian economy till the 1970s. So we were always told to go like this, right? But now we're allowed to speak, now we're allowed to talk, we're allowed to share our artwork with the world, and people are listening, people are watching, people are feeling.
Hmm.
And it's a good time. It's a good time to be an artist right now, brother. It's an awesome time in history.
That's awesome, and I'm glad you feel that way. And I think a lot. I think a lot of Indigenous people do, and even non-Indigenous people. There's most Canadians are open to learning and wanting to know more, and it's the educational system didn't really allow for that that to happen for them at a younger age. So a lot of this stuff is just a huge discovery for them now, but it has been not a surprise for us at all. So it's so nice that people like yourself, whether it's music or a writer, author, all these different people that I talk to, that the voices are being heard, the songs are being heard, and that people are going out of their way to learn about this. Even we see it in our statistics here of our native land with our downloads and our numbers. They just keep growing. I think people are just
Mm-hmm.
looking for those voices so they can educate themselves. And I think you're doing a great part in that as well.
Mm-hmm. I try to look at all the calls to action, right? And one of my favorite ones is educating newcomers to Canada,
Hmm.
because not a lot of newcomers know the history of Canada. They just figure it's Canada and it's
Yeah,
always been like this.
yeah.
And we have to educate them, say no, it wasn't. It wasn't always like this, and our culture is so beautiful that I think we need to share it with other people.
Hmm.
And when we do that, a lot of people come to an understanding and also come to an appreciation, versus having to show up in Canada and take all the negative stereotypes about Indigenous people and then to start suppressing us like how we are oppressed,
Hmm.
versus the opposite. If we were to teach them, okay, this is how things are and this is how it's going to be and how beautiful our culture is, and share it, because there's so many different backgrounds of Indigenous people. Like I could name probably 10 or 20, but there's way more than that.
Yeah.
So all of them all have different things to offer, and the beauty of it. So we could be teaching newcomers to Canada all these different cultures, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Awesome. Well, Jared, we're running out of time. I want to just thank you again for taking time out of which is now becoming a busy schedule as COVID is getting
Yep.
put behind us. So that's super exciting. I hope you get more concerts, more gigs, and get more people downloading your music. Quick shout out if people want to get a hold of your music or download it. What's the best way to do it?
JarridLee.com. That would be the foundation. It's got all my social media handles on there. It's got YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. It's got all of my stream stuff, DistroKid, ways to contact me. It also has our concert updates, shows, upcoming shows, my schedule. Just a way to get in touch with me, and also my music.
Fantastic. All right, JarridLee.com. Thank you, Jarrid Lee,
Yep.
fantastic country music artist and the great, great, great grandson of Louie Riel. Jarrid, thank you so much for coming on our native land.
All right, perfect. Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me.
Beauty.